Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the War Room, which is our interview series as part of the Clone Star Pod. I am your host, Sean Ferrick. I am, of course, joined by the wonderful Mike Overton. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Sean.
Lovely, lovely. Now, for the very first time ever, wink, wink, we are joined by the wonderful and talented Kit Stølen. Kit, how are you, person I'm meeting for the first time ever?
Hello, I'm fantastic.
Excellent. Do you know what? You are fantastic, and I love a confident person. So that is brilliant. Full disclosure. So we recorded a whole episode, and you hear that thing where, oh my God, yeah, he totally said the file was corrupted. So that actually happens for real. And thank you so much for coming back, Kit, and recording again. You are a star. You are a good person. I really thought, like, when Mike deleted the episode, I was very surprised.
Don't you pin this on me.
I'm sorry. Well, listen, apologies are... a quick, tiny introduction. Everyone watching and listening to this probably already knows this, but Mr. Stølen, we know you as the art director on For All Mankind, the art director in Star Trek Picard, art director and concept designer on the Orville, art director on Westworld. You've done some stuff. You're pretty talented, and we are very lucky to get to talk to you.
Well, thank you. I'm lucky to have fallen into a genre that I happen to enjoy, as I was not expecting to actually end up in the science fiction universe in terms of my general work. And I, of course, come from live entertainment. So going into this, I always loved science fiction. I just never expected to ever be working in it.
There is a sort of a strange feeling, isn't there, when something that you've classed as a hobby for a while, and then suddenly, I got money in my bank because of this. What is this? Something's gone very right and very wrong at the same time.
Well, luckily you don't get to notice because you're spending most of the time panicking, trying not to screw it up. So,
yeah, especially on. Exactly, like, and sci-fi, which is, of course, a famously, dull, no imagination needed kind of genre where, I mean, like, look, if you just treat it like a black box theater and you're fine, So did you sleep at all during the production on, well, any of the shows really, but like particularly on Picard, for example, which was gorgeous, by the way?
Oh, well, thank you. The answer is no. You don't sleep very much. A general film workday can be somewhere in the range of, if it's a light day, 10 hours. Usually in the range of 12 to 16 hours is your workday. So you're at work and then you go to sleep and then you're at work. And if you're in Los Angeles, several hours of that is your commute.
I think it's always that meme, isn't it? Like whenever you see the picture of traffic, it's always the 47 lane wide highway in LA, which is what you need to do to go to the shop, let alone go to work.
Yeah, that would be the 405. And it's sometimes as bad as people imagine it. Imagine, before the pandemic was a lot worse, but imagine pulling a 16-hour day and then having 2 hours to get home for about maybe 20 miles.
That'd be like, not that bad, but like 20 miles should not take 2 hours. Do you know what I mean? Like, not that it's around the corner, but I think the amount of it, was there any times where you're just like, I'm just going to cuddle up in this Borg alcove and I'm just going to hunker down for the night because it saves me time?
Some people do it. Some people have little campers that they'll bring onto the studio lot sometimes. Usually you're desperate to get home, but there were a number of days on Westworld where I was just there for 24 hours. And that's also because they would have multiple units filming, and then you're waiting for something to work, and then they're messing with something all night long, and then look, daylight. Oh,
it's like, I could just imagine, sorry, some incredibly tired cameraman just going like, what are you doing? Filming the sunrise. Why? We'll find a place for it. Just Let's just make it worth it. We'll find a reason to put this in the episode.
Film crews get very fun when they're very, very, very tired.
I don't know why, but straight away, I just thought of that poor guy who walked behind Christian Bale setting up lights that day. I feel sorry for everyone in that situation.
Yeah, I believe that was the director of photography as well.
Oh, was it?
I don't recall exactly. I thought it was the DP, but it's been a long time since I've seen that incident. But
that is fun. But sorry, to go back slightly. So you have the job that most of us would kill for, and I believe Mike has taken out a contract on you for that very reason. But how do you go from being a stylistic god steampunk enthusiast to becoming the art director on these shows? Is it, do you walk in and say, hi, do you have any jobs going? Or do you literally have to get in a pit and start stabbing people until you get to the door?
You work a lot. I worked for obviously several decades in both in theater, in various positions. I've also spent time as a concept artist. I've spent time in costumes. I've production designed weird little web series and director's shorts. And so you end up having to spend a lot of time kind of proving your chops doing free work and low budget productions. And so the whole idea is, once you actually get to a point where you're on a nice union production, you should be able to earn a decent salary and a pension and all these things, which used to be the case a lot more than it is at the moment, and is also at the crux of many of these fights that are happening.
Yep.
But I think I've lost track of the original.
You working like a maniac to basically put your show reel together.
You do a lot of free work, which is not something I recommend you should do, because then people expect people to do free work. But it's a trajectory. You have to kind of prove that you can do this before people will let you do it, and you do that through just an incredible amount of stubborn, persistent hard work over and over and over again till you either catch a break or it kind of breaks you.
Now, obviously, this is your lived experience. I think we do have an idea of Hollywood, and I suppose film in general, where it's, it's effectively knocking on doors until you find the one that doesn't slam. It must be. I mean, there must be days where you wake up and you're like, can I keep doing this?
Yes, and I believe that's a common experience for certainly everybody I know. If you're having a lucky streak, you're constantly running into imposter syndrome. Like, do I belong here? I found that that's true of almost everyone I've spoken to. And part of that ties into there are some common artist mentalities which tend to be very self-deprecating and hard on oneself. It's really rewarding when it's rewarding, especially afterwards, and people love doing it. But it is hard work, and it's hard to get here.
For sure. Obviously my career trajectory is probably not going to be crossing over very much with your own. I can barely hold a pencil, let alone design anything. But this idea of, it's a bit like when you're in school, and so this is both a thought and a question. When you're in school and you look at, say, films, and you look at television and you think, wow, but sure, I could never get into that because, I'm going to end up in an office, or I'm going to, end up serving drinks, both of which I've done, both of which I enjoyed to a certain extent. Was there an initial, before you became the art director god, which you now are, what was the kind of the idea like from school? Was it, nope, I have a very clear idea, I'm going to go to design school, I'm going to keep knocking doors, or was there another thing altogether that sort of molded?
Well, everybody has sort of a different trajectory. I I originally came in as a fine artist. I was going to go to an arts college, and I would happen to also be a drama student. I was doing theater in high school. I was building and painting sets, and as I started interviewing for undergrad programs, somehow the theater program was the one that struck me. I realized that as an artist, I was going to just be alone in a cubicle, in isolation, trying to come up with work that then I would have to figure out how to somehow make money off of, which for fine artists is a whole different complicated game that doesn't really have an easy avenue. It's like you're poor, or somebody discovers your work and decides that it's worth something, but usually after you're dead.
Yeah, that's the slight drawback.
Yeah. He was an amazing artist. He suffered all of his life and died, but now we value his work.
Now this painting's worth $100 million. There you go.
Fantastic. Died in the gutter in poverty. Excellent. So instead, I decided to go into theater, which is not necessarily a route for for people who aren't already fabulously wealthy, but I liked the collaborative experience of the work. I like the fact that you can contribute something to it, but so does everybody else, and it gets away from you and it becomes something else. And if your chemistry with the Gestalt is great enough, suddenly this thing comes alive, and you're like, oh, well, I made that, or at least I contributed to the energy of this thing that has come alive, gotten away from me, and is better than I could ever imagine on my own. And so that ended up being the draw for theater, and the fact that maybe somebody might pay me to do this.
So how long did you spend in theater?
Well, I have a undergrad and a grad degree, and I obviously worked in theater before getting my master's. I kicked around for New York a long time doing basically low budget 99 seaters, which is sort of small theaters, and basically working both as a fabricator and as a design assistant. And so I actually used to work for a couple of costume houses. I was at a house called Martin Izquierdo, and they would do the Victoria's Secret's wings, or they would do a lot of the monsters. They did monsters for the movie The Village. And so we would be building sort of weird creatures, and or there would be a Boy George musical where we would be recreating Lee Bowery costumes, or so I kind of kept myself alive doing multiple things all within the industry, because you have to hustle constantly, and whether you're working in this category or that category. I mean, some people tend to compartmentalize and choose a straight and narrow path, which sometimes I wonder whether that would have been better. But I've spent quite a long time just bouncing around different disciplines, which I think makes me a more whole artist.
So was your long-term plan then to always go into television, or was your long-term plan to stay in theater? Or did you not honestly really know, and you just kind of drifted a bit?
I didn't really know. I had my fixation was strange BBC period dramas at the time, and mixed with Doctor Who. So I guess you can kind of see some influences kind of creeping in there. But,
a little bit.
No, not at all.
But I thought I was going to go into theater, and maybe, and I was training as both a set and costume designer. So I was thinking, well, maybe I'll go to London and work work in UK theater for a while, and I did internships with under Jenny Turnami, who is at the time the Globe's resident designer.
Yep.
And I don't know if she still is. It's been a while. And that was like 2001 when I was with the Globe. So I've been kicking around for a while. Went to grad school in California at Cal Arts, and there's theater in California, but it really the film industry is sort of the game in town.
Yeah. So, okay, so you're leaving the kind of theater world. You're beginning to come into the TV film world. So, what was your path then? So, obviously, you went to Cal Art, and then where did you kind of sort of go from there?
I all over the place. I was working for LA Opera, building dwarves and monsters for one of they were doing the Ring Cycle, all of them. That kept me employed for quite a while. I would take any little sort of web series that popped up, small theater show, and I had a brief stint as an assistant costume designer on the last season of Glee. And at that point, I decided, I'm going to get out of costumes and go straight for the art department, which my girlfriend at the time actually pushed me to do, as she herself was working in the industry and now is a costume designer for the morning show. But nice. She sort of pushed me. I was sort of floating around, doing various like odd entertainment industry jobs in the search of what you sort of refer to as a flip. And a flip is if one of the shows that you're working on goes union, that's how you can get into the union, because they actually go out of their way to make it difficult to join the unions to get in and start working. So people spend a lot of time doing non-union projects in the hope that either they'll get connections or that project will flip, and then you will be invited to join one of the various unions.
Gotcha.
And so I spent a long time sort of chasing flips and various other avenues. And so she ultimately just pushed me to just go straight at a particular union, which in this case is the Art Directors Guild, and do whatever you can to just directly get into that. And so I kind of narrowed my focus, and here's where I'm at, which at the moment is doing nothing because everything's shut down.
Yeah, I suppose because obviously, as of the recording of this episode, the Writers Guild, that an agreement has been reached there, which is fantastic news. But of course, SAG-AFTRA, that is ongoing. And one of the things that actually we've heard so often recently is from two separate people. So I'm not naming or shaming. Both went, "Oh, I thought the actors were just supporting the writers. I thought there was just a solidarity they were going out." It was like, perhaps I understand maybe why you thought that, but no. There's until we can take down that terrible art directors union, everyone needs to strike, because they're the true overlords of Hollywood.
Yep.
Oh, indeed, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the thing, is that because people have heard stories of high actor salaries, they think that all actors are getting paid ridiculous amounts of money, and those are really the select few, and everybody else is carrying multiple jobs and barely scraping by, which is the case all across the industry. Few people get paid absurd amounts of money. Everybody else used to make a very comfortable middle class income, and has not adjusted for inflation and has been sort of squeezed more and more and more over time.
Yeah.
That is, and go into as much or as little detail as you like in this one, but my question is, like, in those years when you're doing all of this work and all this, like, is it a case of then do you also have to carry, your part-time job at the 7-Eleven or, to support yourself? Because again, LA, no joke, famously expensive place to live.
well, not as bad as San Francisco or Manhattan, but yeah. Well, you know, I used to also still teach at Cal Arts on the weekends, and then after pulling a week of very long days, I just didn't have the energy left. But and luckily for me, the art director rate is pretty okay where I'm at. There's always things we could do better. Where our fights are more about royalties and benefits into the health and pension plan. That's a whole different complicated alchemy. But if you're an actor, and especially if you're an actor who does sort of day playing and walk-in parts, you only work a day here or there. You work in different shows, but then you have to maintain a job that's flexible enough that lets you take a job. Because if you're working, if you have any other career, and you're like, oh, I need to take a couple days to shoot a project. They usually won't allow it. So you can't really have a steady other career. You can only have gig work on the side, as well as being an actor, which is also gig work. And so unless you get like a TV show where you're contracted for, 3 seasons or something like that, you've got to make income in other places. And now, of course, 3 seasons might be 10 episodes and not like 21 episodes or 26 episodes. And that's also some of the problems that the writers were finding, is that they would be, bonded to this particular project, but it's like, well, you're only working for a chunk of the year. Yeah. And now they're not allowed to take other shows. And so I'm hoping that in their contracts, they've worked out all of that. And that IATSE contract negotiations are coming up in a few years as well, that hopefully we address issues like AI use and the continuing fight for the health and pension package.
So what was your first TV art director gig? Or what was your what was your first TV job?
So I had done some B movies at various positions, but in terms of like a big, large scale thing, it was Westworld. And I came in as an assistant art director, and I actually got promoted up during the show to a full art director. And it was just the production designer, Zach Grobler, took a risk on me. I had come and everyone said, oh, you have a great portfolio, but you don't have a long list of union shows you've already worked on. So people, generally aren't comfortable with hiring you. And so somebody has to come in and say, well, okay, I think you're worth it. I'll take a risk on you. And then as soon as you've done that, then it tends to open the door for the next thing. Okay, you did Westworld. Here's a weird little sci-fi anthology series, and then your name gets passed around. Stephen Lineweaver called me up and said, hey, we've got like a little comedy sci-fi show. We're not sure what's going to happen with it. I just need somebody to come on for like 2 weeks to help figure out some spaceship stuff. And that was Orville.
Yeah, a very small unknown show called Orville.
Yeah.
Very small. Well, we have no idea what that show was going to be. And so all the iterations of it, I think, would make a very, very interesting story at some point. All the different ship designs and the direction and the constant questions of, well, what actually are we? Are we Star Trek? Are we not Star Trek? What are the levels that are being played with here? Was sort of an interesting route.
Yeah,
that is quite funny because ask most Trekkies, and it's kind of taken that position that Galaxy Quest holds, as well as that it's like an honorary Star Trek property. It's very much its own thing, and yet it's like you could easily fit it into certainly the Next Generation sort of era. I just really like the lights. I think we talked about this before. It's like, it's kind of, oh, you could see everything. Oh, that's fun. And I'm sorry, don't get me wrong, I love the kind of more realistic, anything from Battlestar Galactica onwards. But yeah, it harkens back to that sort of that feeling that was there in the kind of the 80s and the 90s of, kind of like, I like this scene, but I think we could have more halogen bulbs here. More halogen. Okay, let's put some more floodlights in here.
Well, obviously part of that was Marvin, who was actually a director of photography for the Next Generation, there were a lot of Next Generation people on the show itself, and again, much of that was also the reality of it being a network TV show for Fox. They brightly light everything because you can move fast through your setups. So we made a set that functions as a nice soft light box for everybody, and so you don't have to bring in a lot of equipment. You're not doing a lot of sculpting. You basically turn on the lights and you film and film and film as fast as you can. And so that's sort of where that look and that classic TV look has always come from. And now everyone's trying to kind of achieve this sort of more filmic. It's almost sort of like a Baroque painting lighting where it's dark and there's a single side sculpting light, and it all comes into vogues of filmmaking. But then the other aspect is just the practicality of it.
That's actually, like, now that you say that, it sounds like, oh, that sounds like a really obvious good idea. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it makes perfect sense. I get it. Like,
well, you notice if you watch the first season of Next Generation, there's a lot more shadows and sculpting in the lighting. It's a lot moodier, and then as the seasons go on, everything gets softer floodlit because they just get faster. They get more efficient about it. And then when it goes to Generations, everything's shadowy and moody again because it's a film. They have time to set up scenes. They can set up lighting. There's all these sort of beautiful warm light that's coming in from the windows in that movie that you generally you never get to see in the show because it's like turn on the lights and go.
Gotcha.
That's really interesting. I was doing a rewatch of Generations there recently, and it's funny when you think of the preceding episode is All Good Things, where it's your standard, TV. Here's what the bridge looks like in 3 different versions, and then you go from, and it's funny because you're right. It is like the look of Generations. It's obviously very crafted. Everything is it's lit that way for a reason. It looks that way for a reason, and you're kind of like, did they lose a load of light since last week? What? Hang on. What happened there? And it's just funny because, yeah, you're right. You don't think about those things until it sort of slaps you in the face in a 40-foot screen.
Well, that's also the things. Like, I mean, you're not used to seeing the TV show big on a screen. These are compositions. These are aspect ratios and compositions that are meant for the movie screen versus the TV screen. But if you're watching them all on the same screen, it becomes really noticeable. And obviously, the resolution of TVs that you would have had for the show is considerably worse.
Yeah, they're all old CRTs, aren't they? 360p if you're lucky, and you go to the cinema and you got this massive 40-foot screen. I remember watching Generations in the cinema and seeing the Enterprise D in I'm going to say high resolution because I suppose it was at the time, but yeah, in HD as it were. It was quite a shock to the system, I think, because I've been so used to seeing it on my parents' 18-inch old CRT on a VHS that had been recorded over about 300 times. So the quality was pretty abysmal to then walk into the cinema and see there it is in its full glory.
Well, it's like now that they have cleaned up the next gen episodes, I'm looking at it like I can see the paint, the brush marks on the paint in that door, and I can see all the actors' sort of spike marks on the floor. And like, oh, there's a mismatch there in the set, and oh, look, I can see light under that door, and these are all the things that I of course fixate on. But
they're all the things that you as an art director would notice. But
well, it's like the first 2 seasons for Orville. It's like spot the stain on the carpet. Like, oh, we missed that one. Oh no, oh, there's that one. Oh, we didn't get that one. Or oh, VFX had to remove that one and it was expensive. Or really, I mean, some of these shows just become spot the stain on the set.
But like with a show like Orville, you could easily just write into, sort of like, oh, he's dropped his coffee, or, because that's what I love about the Orville is you see them going to the command chair and he's got a coffee. I mean, that's the most unrealistic thing of Next Generation to me, is that you never see Picard with his Earl Grey in the captain's chair. You never see Worf with the prune juice up at the. Of course, now I know it's because they would be.
There are coffee holders on the D bridge.
Yeah,
that's right. There is, which I only saw on the remake.
they were painted on, weren't they? They weren't actually built in. They were just well, I think they were a decal, but yeah. But yes, they were technically. Yeah.
But actually, speaking of the remade Enterprise D bridge, we get to go from these two drastic styles of effective filmmaking, which is Picard season 3, episodes 1 to 9, and save the last 5 minutes, and then you have episode 10, which is predominantly set on a set that was designed and built to look like we're back in the 90s. Is there like a whiplash almost feeling in that when you're going from extreme to extreme?
Well, I don't know about the D, because I only just got to experience Liz's work and peek my head in and sit in the chairs when no one was looking and all that kind of stuff.
Jealous.
But well, I think that sort of, well, that kind of ties into, like, Dave gave us a spiel when we came on board that we're not to treat this in the traditional way that you would a science fiction show, which is, there's a tendency to kind of reinvent the wheel every time you do a sci-fi show. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's what looks good for your audience now when you go forward. And Dave kind of gave this spiel that was like, we are to treat it like a historical, and which is really means that we're treated like it's a real thing. Which, if you're doing a period, even if we're talking about a hypothetical future period in what may or may not be an alternate timeline, everything still has to come from somewhere. Even if you're doing a contemporary project, things come. If you're doing something that's set, in 2023, not everything in the world is from 2023. In fact, very few things will be. There's a design history just even out in the street. That church is probably 100 years old or 1,000 years old, depending on where you are. People have old cars. People are wearing older fashions. So you're used to the idea that in reality, things don't all come from the same design hand, but obviously designs do evolve from previous functions. And so you want to see sort of echoes of that. In the sense that there's an aesthetic incongruity between the two, I don't think it bothers me as much, especially not in the way that we treated this season, where you were supposed to see familiar things. We've spent a long time in this universe, and so all these elements are the result of a full life.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that the development, that the history of it being shown straight away on screen. How much fun was it getting to rain sparks down on Patrick Stewart and Ed Speleers? I was about to say Ed Helms there for a second. Sorry, I just retroactively recast Jack Crusher. And Ed Speleers, because that set for the Borg Queen's lair, that's as creepy, I think, a Borg set as we've seen.
Yeah.
It's always fun when special effects gets to go in and make actual things sort of blow up and spark, and it never gets old. Like they'll load air cannons full of things and things blowing off and sparks raining down, explosions happening. Just never gets old.
It's just cool.
I do feel that the Borg need to learn cable management.
If you're familiar with chaos theory, advanced order, it just seems like chaos to those of us who have inadequate minds, and us, our tiny puny human minds cannot understand the majesty that is Borg cable management.
That is as good an explanation as anything. 100%. And also, I do not want the Borg to ever go wireless. Like, that's it. It's game over. The second they realize, wait, why don't we just not send a fleet of ships and just like beam a nanoprobe virus into their atmosphere, which they've mentioned doing a couple of times and thankfully haven't.
You know, that is season 3 of Picard, yeah?
It actually is. Oh my God, I'm such a fool.
Just saying.
Oh no. Oh God. Oh, I swear, kid. I swear I watched it. I have watched some Star Trek. I promise. The you know, with the Borg and the light swords and everything, yeah?
Oh, hand back your nerd card, sir.
It's been real, everyone. A very good evening to you both. No.
Yes, they stopped the Borg from going wireless.
Yeah.
Some of those words were what I said. Oh God. Oh.
Moving on swiftly. Okay, so hang on. What else did you do on Picard?
Okay, so I did most all the District 6 sets, needs, and there were of course quite a lot of environments that we never got to see. I did the Daystrom station, and then obviously all the Borg sets.
Of course. One of the things I love about Sneed's, is it a shop? Is it a? I'm guessing it's a shop, isn't it? It's a.
No, it's like that mob movie where he's got kind of a back room in the casino kitchen out. That's sort of his little back VIP area. Yeah, that's sort of essentially what it is.
The one thing I love about his lair, I'm going to call it a lair, is the Easter eggs. The dozens of Easter eggs. I mean, I remember seeing, I'm pretty sure it's Cisco's baseball. There's Sluggo Cola. There's Klingon Cola. And where did they come about from putting those Easter eggs in? Was that intentional? I mean, I'm guessing it was intentional, but I mean, I'm guessing there was a lot of thought that went into those.
Well, so like a note on Easter eggs is I personally tend to not like fourth wall breaking nods or fan nods or things like that. So we were pretty intensive. We obviously wanted to fill the world with recognizable things, but everything got interrogated to should it belong there in the scene? If it was something from an episode, did it survive at the end of the episode? So we tried to justify everything. In Sneed's case, he's a collector. He's he's obsessed with kind of various human things, and so he's got hand grenades, and it's just objects that hold value to him.
Exactly what every Ferengi needs: a hand grenade.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that they're quite old hand grenades. I forget what they were. I think they were like World War II hand grenades, even. But they would be. Everything just becomes collectible artifacts, especially to a character like Sneed. So he's just showing, "Oh, look at my stuff."
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got rules of acquisition. We've got desiccation discs. We actually made it. Never went on the screen, but we made one of the Ferengi control domes.
Oh, cool!
It was actually it was originally supposed to be on the table in the center. And then they were lining up the shots with Raffi, and the director's like, "It's in the way." So we just kind of took it away because it was blocking the actual scene that needed to happen. But yes, we went on all effort of doing one of the old domes and recreating all the little latinum slips and strips and bars, and we have quite a few games.
Latinum somewhere.
Same.
We realized that there was never really a means of expressing currency and currency conversions for Latinum. So Mike Akuda came up with a whole system for that. And then we just filled that market with as many sort of alien species that would reasonably be there from Trek lore. And then, we always try to add a lot more in as well, so that things don't look too small universe.
I saw some of the photos that Dave Blass took of the set, and they are incredible. The sheer volume of detail you never really sort of see on screen, but to see it in those photos shows the amount of work that went into putting those sets together.
We made yeah, we made multiple streets. They all have sort of different sectors. As you kind of travel off down to an alley, it gets much more Bajoran. There's Umak's parlors, and just we made a full environment that people could happily explore. But you never quite know what's going to eventually make it on screen, and so you try to fill it out and give them enough opportunities to have amazing spaces in which they can play out, and then you're lucky if a lot of it finally makes it to the end, but that's always in service of the story and the flow of the episode. But there were in the original script, Worf and Raffi are sort of led into this trap by this Klingon girl, and so there were like lots of little beats and things that sort of may have happened or they were thinking about. So we were trying to give them as much possibility in that environment.
It's as you say as well. It's that great melting pot of all these different cultures. But then, like, it would have been quite out of place to see a Cardassian phalanx or maybe Romulans, because where else are they going to go? Let's be honest. And I like that as well. It is the people you would expect to see trading. Probably the most outlandish part was having a gangster Vulcan, but I just thought that was brilliant.
Well, people can apply logic to all sorts of situations. We actually had a Vulcan logic shrine, a sort of an evangelical logic shrine or something, because we assumed that some group of Vulcans would constantly be trying to go around going, well, have you considered choosing logic?
So what you're saying is they were the Jehovah's Witnesses of District 6. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're a group of Vulcans constantly having to deal with other people and their annoying, loud, uncontrollable emotions, you might go around proselytizing and saying, well, you'd be less annoying to me if you chose logic.
And you know what? They'd phrase it that way as well. They would. And it's just like, do you not understand that you will benefit from not annoying me as much?
And hopefully you'll not annoy yourself.
I just have visions of Tuvok saying that to Neelix.
And Neelix just sitting there with the flower saying, keep going, Mr. Vulcan. I will jump back in that transporter with you.
But yeah, we had Romulans there selling like questionable parts that couldn't be replicated off of ships. We were always trying to justify. It's like, well, why can't they replicate this? Okay, well, this is it comes from materials that you can't replicate, or well, civilian replicators can't replicate weapons because then they'd be traceable. So there were Andorian stalls in which they were selling narcotic elixirs that had come out of the ice and harvested from the bodies of thermal worms, and we got really deep, and it's sad. It's sad that a lot of those details never have not been seen except for photos, but we had a lot of great fun in there.
That's it as well. I think one of the great things. So I think Picard season 3 particularly, I think, has been the most socially active of nearly all of the Star Trek. When I say like the amount of resources and the amount of extra information that we've got via social media from, say, like yourself, say like Dave Blass, Terry Metalis, sharing all of these tidbits and behind the scenes. So like it's one of the things I really enjoyed. For example, I think it was just yesterday or the day before, Dave Blass tweeted out as sort of a here's everything that was on Daystrom Station as a video. I saw just a moment ago, Mike Okuda retweeting, I think yourself retweeting it as well. And like, as a fan, I love it. As an Easter egg hunter, I could have bloody used that when I was doing the ups and downs for the episode. But anyway, listen, we'll let that one pass. But it's that this is the kind of stuff that we get to enjoy, not just as fans, but also it's the stuff that we never would have got to have seen otherwise.
Well, and I have a correction for you on that one. Archer is not in the vaults.
Yeah, I know. I got that. Okay, so there I was. So I'm going to blame my computer screen. It's me. Right. But I somehow saw the word a Terran, and I got Archer from that because I was still writing off live. Well, if Kirk's over there, then, who else is dead? Archer is over there. Yeah. Like if Janeway's body was there, that would have raised more questions than it answered. Part of me would have been like, super secret celestial vault over there with, we can't talk about what's in that one. But yeah, okay. I mean, I'm delighted the Arterans, are still doing their thing. Well, maybe we can get an Arteran version of Archer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I obviously Terry wrote Kirk specifically in there, and so only he knows what his intentions are concerning that. But we made huge lists and just had an exhaustive sessions where we interrogated every single item. Did it survive to the end of the episode? Is it reasonable that some second contact cleanup crew came through and grabbed this? And basically went through every single one. Or is there another one? Those scenes, again, were originally longer, where they're going deeper and deeper into the vault and security doors are going off. And that eventually it was a lot of walking and talking in hallways. So it's obvious that got shortened down. But we had whole sectors of, okay, well, now they're in all of the virus and pathogen section. And so you see, obviously, a lot of familiar viruses and pathogens that happen throughout the show. Or things that were even just mentioned. Well, here's an example of this flu, and they're trying to get the vaccine for this flu, and so here's a sample of that, and the Genesis device, and the set decorator had actually found the most important device in the galaxy. It was held by a private collector, and she was trying to see if she wanted to bring it in, and for reference, the most important device in the galaxy is a strange prop with two neon tubes that goes out to zap that once you see it, you've seen it everywhere in everything.
In everything. I don't know how. It's the Forrest Gump of props.
Yeah, it was just some nondescript blinky thing that was in a prop rental house that was just like, that's good, stick that in the background. It just ended up everywhere.
You can say that about the discs above the Borg in the Borg alcoves, can't you? In the alcoves, even. If you go back to TNG, you had the plasma discs, didn't you, above the head
the TNG generator? They didn't use the plasma disc. Didn't show up till First Contact. It's interesting because it's like everyone was thrown by the red vines, and they're like, "But the Borg are green." It's like, but the green doesn't really come about. The super saturated green and the plasma discs and all that stuff that comes about at First Contact, and then they lean into that style in Voyager.
Yeah.
But in Best of Both Worlds and Q-Who, it's actually just a graphic disc that's sort of right behind the head,
right.
With kind of board graphics. And actually, we took those graphics and did them on clear plex and edge lit them, and then took the plasma disc as well and kind of combined that sort of look, so it seemed like there was energy crawling across those circuits. But then we did it in more of the Best of Both Worlds shape, kind of.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like a hybrid sort of development stage in between what you'd see in Best of Both Worlds and then the First Contact look.
Got you. Okay, well, that makes a bit more sense.
When are you starting on Star Trek Legacy? We always think as long as we can just ask someone completely out of the blue, they'll just slip up and tell us live on air.
Damn it!
Yeah, it's
not working, Sean.
one day we'll get there. But no, like the future, because you have created all of Picard season 3 now. You've created what I think is a good, solid standpoint for whatever the next story is. We've got a really strong visual jumping off point, which obviously borrows from everything that's led up to this point, and yet it's still very much its own thing. Like, the Enterprise G is immediately recognizable now as the ship that was, that's it. It's Picard. It's definitely done, and yet it's side by side with a few Sovereign classes at one point. So I love where it's at. So, when do you need us? Like, we can be in costume, no problem. It's no worry. We'll take whatever time off is needed.
Yep, definitely.
Well, I'm sure that Terry and Dave and everybody would love that to happen. At the moment, we don't know anything because nobody's making deals and making decisions, and so I don't know. I don't know what's happening in the higher echelons, what they have in their slate of shows that they already have in the queue. That's always a very complicated alchemy, but the fans have made things happen before. Most recently in Prodigy, and Strange New Worlds wouldn't if it wasn't for fan engagement.
Yep.
So I would say that if you want something to happen, keep saying it loudly, and hopefully the powers that be will listen.
I think so, and you are so right. Like, we literally, as of recording, within the last 24 hours, we have proof of this working, as you say, with Star Trek Prodigy now being picked up by Netflix, which is just wonderful news. I suppose on the same vein, I know the answer to this. There is no answer, but Orville season 4, hopefully, we'll get to enjoy that, because I think I mentioned the last time we spoke that I watched season 1 as it came out, and then life happened. So that when I came back to it, I think it was halfway through season 3. So I sort of binged it and just completely fell in love with it all over again. And there's so much talent and so much passion there that, if nothing else, it would be a shame for it not to continue. And I am sure / hope that you feel the same way.
So I can say that we still don't have any formal word concerning an additional season of Orville, or more potentially. It's all very dependent on what happens after the strikes. But I can say that there's a desire to do more, and so hopefully there's a more concrete answer at that at some point. But obviously the studios have sort of known that the strikes were coming for a long time, and that has gummed up the works on any particular decision making. And ultimately it just really depends for a lot of shows on what the landscape after this looks like in the entertainment industry.
Yep.
Obviously, a lot of studios like a major slash and burn campaign in terms of shows. So hopefully the good shows manage to survive.
Well, I'm glad that For All Mankind season 4 will be out very soon.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of my favorite current sci-fi shows.
And that show has an interesting Trek connection as well, not only from Ronald D. Moore, but his concept of the series, which I believe he said publicly, so I don't think I'm getting in trouble for saying this, is his broad concept for the show is an alternate history that would take you from the moon landing to Star Trek, or something that is like Star Trek.
Yep.
And so the series evolves each season, and should it continue on its trajectory, or manage to complete its run, that's sort of the vague idea of where they hope to be headed in.
I love that idea. I'm still on season 1. I know. I am.
Hey, I've
give
watched
me a show to watch. I can't wait to
now.
start it in 3 years. I'm that person.
Hey, I've caught up with Orville now. Last time we did this recording, I hadn't watched season 3. I have now watched season 3 of Orville.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's very true. Well, apparently I haven't even watched Picard season 3, and I just outed myself on the pod by doing that. So, I mean, I've really got to get my skates on and get watching these things. And of course, helping absolutely nobody is the return of Doctor Who next month. You know, then our watch list is going to get even longer. And actually, to everyone listening to this who's also Whovian, to immediately date what time we recorded at, I can officially reveal that the BBC has just tweeted out recording the new theme tune has just been released online. I obviously haven't heard it yet because I'm enjoying the conversation with you fine gentlemen. But I know what I'll be doing the second we finish.
Yep, definitely.
But it's sort of maybe not full circle, but the excitement that comes from sci-fi and the imagination that goes into sci-fi, I think it speaks to a part of all of us. You could be the most passive sci-fi fan in the world. You could be the most passionate sci-fi fan in the world. There is something for everyone. If I take season 1 of For All Mankind, which, you know, if you were to look at it, is a very straight show. It just happens to be set in an alternate history. And then you get the Orville, where, you know, you've got, you know, I was going to say, it's obviously not warp drive. Oh, no, it's been so long since I've watched it. Popped out of my head.
Quantum drive, which is essentially the every time I try to say his last name, it butchers in the process of going from brain to mouth. The Mexican physicist Alcubierre, no, probably butchering it.
Yes, he wrote the paper, didn't he? Sorry, because I remember we did a video on him. So I'm sharing your embarrassment. I should remember this. We did a whole video on him.
Every time his name comes up, I look up, how do I say it properly? You listen to it, okay. But then once it comes time to actually say the name, it's like, nope. But so the Orville's quantum drive is very much based on those principles. And we have Andre Beaumontes, who was the Star Trek's, he was obviously a writer and producer on the show, but he was Trek's science advisor. So he's kind of guiding all these principles about how everything works. And I think, you know, as sort of light as people tend to think that the Orville treats things, we've kind of gone down the deep dive and like, well, this is how the power systems work. This is actually how their faster than light drive works. So it helps that we're all nerds. So of course we've gone down the rabbit hole.
I'm just gonna say on that one, I was watching a very interesting snippet of a show where they are currently essentially generating antimatter and trying to determine if it is a feasible power source. But it turns out you have to use so much energy to generate antimatter that it's not worth the time currently. So that kind of wipes out the antimatter warp drive.
I mean, it's like with fusion. We can do it, but it costs more energy than you get out of it. I think what the big revelation recently happened is they got slightly more energy out of it than they put into it, but they're still putting more energy in if you actually read the process of what they have to do.
It's a refinement process, isn't it? So that's what they're doing with fusion at the moment. It's refining it down to, you know, because at the moment the devices for these are massive. They're building size, and they're trying to refine those down to something you could put in your garage or something to, you know, generate fuel. But
I don't know.
We're still a long way off.
We're still a long way off, and I don't know if you can ever fit that in your garage, but I mean, and then the whole process for fusion is mind blowing. It's like, well, there's a glass thing and a thing, and they hit it with lasers, and this has to happen, and that has to happen. And you're like, okay, well, and this has to happen for like multiple times for every split second, and it's like, well, that sounds like a lot to make it actually viable. But first, you have to figure out how to do the mind blowing science thing, and then work out the rest afterwards.
Plus, we've got all these spare fossil fuels just sitting around, so we should, you know, we'll just stick with them. They seem to be fine, with absolutely no adverse effects whatsoever.
Oh, yeah. The planet's definitely not the hottest it's ever been.
Right. Well, and also we use it for other things, so burning it's probably not good.
Be fine. Now, you've been very generous with your time, so thank you very much. We'll come up toward the end now. So this is so part of the joke as well as that, because there is a lost episode of the War Room out there in the ether somewhere. You've had slightly more warning than most people get when it comes to this next question. Pressure. So, Kit Stølen, what does Star Trek mean to you?
Okay, deer in headlight moment. see, now that I've actually had time to think about this, I still don't have a good answer. And the reason is that wow, I feel like I'm having the same reaction last time. You've grown up with a thing. It means different things to you all throughout the sort of, stages of your life. If you've watched it with family, there are those sort of bonds and connections to it. So, but I will say this, and especially from the point of time in which I sort of grew to love it and was watching it, which would have been late 80s, 90s, is that it was important to have a series in which the protagonists were champions of science, critical thinking, and for who only killed to defend themselves or if they had to. And I think both Doctor Who and Star Trek hold those places in my heart for those reasons, and especially in the context of it being the 80s, because the ideal action hero was a particularly macho figure who murdered people left and right, and that was cool. And so to have something contrary to that, to saying that, war is perhaps not fun, not a good idea, and if there's any other way, maybe people shouldn't kill each other. Maybe people should talk this out, and that science and exploration are good things. And I feel like we're at a point where that is an important message again that we need to remind people of.
I think that is an excellent takeaway. Certainly a very timely message. But yes, Kit, thank you so much for joining us. We did threaten you last time that we'd love to have you back. I just don't think we were expecting it in this context, but thank you very much for coming back. It's very much appreciated.
Well, I'd be happy to come back, and whenever you would like, assuming I'm free. Hopefully I'm not as free as I have been in the future, but whenever you'd like me back, I'd be happy to come and ramble at you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, because it's such a it's I now love that I get to say it's always such a pleasure chatting to you. I love that. For our episode today, let me just say thank you everyone who has been watching and listening along. Kit, where is the best place to get in touch with you and to see examples of your work, and for the stalkers out there?
For the moment, the platform that is formerly known as Twitter, for as long as that lasts. I'm not as particularly active on Facebook anymore, and I'm branching out into some other networks, assuming that the one I'm currently on is going to burn down at some point soon, hopefully. So you can find me there at the moment, and I'm making my other whereabouts known.
Cool. I like it. Mike, as well, where can everyone find you?
Predominantly Twitter. Twitter's the best place, but I am also on, I'm on everything else: Threads, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, etc.
Yeah, but yes, likewise, the only one I'm not on yet is Threads. I have seen it is now an option for me to share things via Threads. For ages, it wasn't in the EU, so I don't know. But I'm on all the rest of them. And of course, you can follow the podcast at the Clone Star Pod on, I'm calling it Twitter, and Instagram, and Blue Sky,
and Facebook. There is now a Facebook page.
Lovely. Facebook as well. This is great. You do a full circle of the chair and you go back and there's another platform. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And of course,
everyone.
Pod.com.
Oh, of course. See, what? Listen, it's hard to keep up. You're so productive. Everyone, thank you so much, Kit. Thank you so much once again. You are a hero. And I just love your living room. I know how weird that sounds. So if you're just listening along, that has no context. But if you're watching this along, his living room is so cool. But everyone,
go.
Say again.
It was far messier just a moment ago. But
you done good. Everyone, live long and prosper, and we'll chat to you soon. Bye.